The car rolled to a stop, so gently I barely noticed. I was half asleep, forehead pressed to the window, letting the Alabama heat blur the world outside. A song pulsed through my headphones, some indie track I knew too well, and my parents' voices had long faded into background static. "Abigail," my father said suddenly without turning around, "get your mother and me something to drink." I pulled one earbud out and blinked. We were parked beside an old crumbling train station, the kind that looked like it hadn't seen a working line in 20 years. The air outside shimmered from the heat. "Honey, your dad wants a soda." "I'll take water," my mother added, smiling that thin, polite smile that always made me feel like I was 5 again, like a prop in someone else's perfect day. I opened the door. The heat slammed into me like a wall. I didn't ask why we were stopping here. I didn't ask why the car was idling at a place so run down the vending machines looked like they might spit out dust. I just did what I always did, what I was taught to do. I obeyed. I walked over to the vending machines, peeled a $5 bill from the few I had left from my summer job, and pressed the buttons. The machine groaned reluctant, and finally gave me a lukewarm Coke and a sweating bottle of water. When I turned around, the car was gone. At first, I didn't panic. I looked left, then right. Maybe Dad had driven to a shaded spot. Maybe they were circling back. I stepped toward the curb. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. "Let's see how long it takes you to get home." Consider this a lesson. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I just stared at the screen. The bright summer sun, the thick heat, the smell of asphalt and rust, everything stood still. I hit call, straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. My fingers clenched around the Coke until the bottle crinkled. The station was nearly empty. Just a few older men sitting on a bench, some luggage scattered around. No one looked at me. No one saw a 16-year-old girl with a backpack and a vending machine soda standing completely alone. It wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a prank. They left me like I was nothing. I should have cried. I should have sat down and broken apart. But I didn't. Something in me, something that had been quiet for years, stirred. Maybe it was because this wasn't the first time. At 13, they locked me outside during a thunderstorm because I forgot to clean the kitchen. At 14, I walked 6 miles home in the pouring rain because I missed the bus, and they thought I needed consequences. At 15, they let Vivian, my perfect older sister, borrow the car for prom while I stayed home scrubbing the floor. Now at 16, they had left me at a forgotten train station to teach me a lesson. They didn't want me to find my way home. They wanted to prove that I couldn't. I checked my wallet. $140. My entire summer savings from babysitting and cleaning houses. Not much, but enough. I walked toward the ticket window. "Excuse me," I said, voice steadier than I expected. "Where's the nearest bus station?" The old man behind the counter looked up lazily, gesturing with his chin. 2 miles down that road. Ain't much? I nodded. That's fine. I walked. Sweat dripped down my back. My shoes hit hot gravel with every step. I ignored the buzzing in my pocket. 3 new messages, all from Mom. "Don't you dare call your aunt. This is for your own good. We're doing this because we love you." I blocked the number. Then I called the only person I had left. It rang once. Twice. "Abigail." Her voice was sharp, warm, surprised. "Hi, Aunt Marigold," I said, my voice cracking for the first time. "Can you come get me?" There was silence. Then her breath caught. "Where are you?" I gave her the cross street and the name of the bus stop. They left me. At a train station. Said I had to find my own way home. She didn't ask questions, didn't try to reason it away. "Stay right where you are, sweetheart," she said, her voice now steel. I'm on my way. 2 hours later, her car pulled up to the curb. It was an old beige Ford that rattled like it was held together by good intentions, but it felt like rescue. She got out, slammed the door, and wrapped me in her arms so hard I thought I might finally fall apart. We didn't talk for a while. Not until we were 30 minutes down the highway. I'm sorry, I whispered, staring at the window, the trees blurring past. She reached across the center console and squeezed my hand. You don't need to be sorry, Abigail. You didn't do anything wrong, and you don't need to go back. I turned to look at her. She wasn't crying. Her jaw was set, eyes forward. I saw it for the first time, someone who would burn bridges to keep me safe. They'll come back for me, I said. But the words felt hollow. No, she said. They'll come back for control. There's a difference. I didn't sleep that night. I laid on the couch in her guest room, staring at the ceiling fan, trying to memorize the feel of sheets that didn't smell like anger. The next morning, as the light poured in through the blinds, I sat up slowly. I was safe. But I was also gone. From them. From that chapter. From the family who only saw me as a problem to fix. As Aunt Marigold made coffee in the kitchen, I stood by the window and looked out at the small yard she kept tidy with her own hands. If they abandoned me like I was a stranger, I whispered to the window pane, then I'll live like I was never theirs. The air smelled like lavender and warm bread, and for the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone to come save me. I had already started saving myself. 2 decades after the train station, that's how my life divided itself before and after. Before I was a quiet girl, desperate for love, dragging invisible chains forged by my parents' cold expectations. After I became someone no one in that family recognized. Especially not the woman staring out from the 27th floor corner office, her name on the door, her past sealed behind a new last name. Holloway had become nothing more than a ghost. It was just another Thursday when the past came knocking. I was sipping black coffee, glancing through site plans for our new downtown development, when my phone buzzed. Not with a call. A voicemail, unfamiliar number. I almost deleted it. But some instinct made me tap play. Abby, please pick up. The voice paused, cracked. Mom and Dad, they found you. They need your help. Vivian. I froze. Vivian, my sister, the golden child, the obedient echo of our parents' demands. The one who watched me sob behind closed doors and never once asked why. The one who didn't lift a finger the day I disappeared from that train station. I replayed the voicemail this time, catching the tremble in her voice. Still calling me Abby, like we were teenagers again, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't spent years clawing my way out of the pit they left me in. I let the silence hang in the air before I responded, not with a call, but with a text. Tomorrow, Denny's, 5th and 7th, 7 a.m. Come alone, or don't come at all. It was still dark when I pulled into the lot. A part of me hoped she wouldn't show. Another part of me knew she would, because people like Vivian never missed a scene when their script depended on it. She arrived at 7:04. Same carefully styled hair, same posture that tried too hard to be relaxed. But she looked tired, worn, like a silk ribbon stretched too thin. Abby, she greeted, sliding into the booth like a ghost from another life. I'm not Abby anymore. I sipped my coffee. It's Abigail. Her smile faltered. Right. Sorry. The server brought 2 menus, but I didn't bother opening mine. I wasn't here to eat. It's been a long time, Vivian offered. I waited. She fidgeted with the edge of her napkin, lips pursed. You look good. You look nervous. She let out a breathy, humorless laugh. Yeah. Well, this is complicated. No, Vivian, I said evenly. It's simple. You want something. Say it. Her jaw tightened for a second, then loosened as she exhaled slowly. They're in trouble, Abigail. Mom and Dad. Financially. It's bad. I didn't speak. Just watched her. Waited for the rehearsed lines to drop. They're losing the house. Dad's gambling again. Mom, she racked up debt. Credit cards, medical bills. They're drowning. And when they found out you were... She hesitated, then looked up at me. They thought maybe you could help. There it was, the ask. I see, I said, folding my hands. They need the daughter they left at a train station to come home and bail them out. Her eyes darted down. They didn't know it would go this far. They never do. She glanced around nervously. They're desperate, Abigail. They're old, scared. They've made mistakes, but they're still your parents. No, I said softly. They were my parents, until the day they decided I was expendable. Vivian's hands trembled slightly. They came back that day, you know. An hour later, they thought you'd be waiting. They left me in 104-degree heat with no phone battery and $5. That wasn't discipline. That was abandonment. She flinched. I didn't care. They thought it would make you stronger, she whispered. It did, I said coldly, just not in the way they wanted. The silence between us thickened. Then, as if switching gears, she said, they don't want money. They want you to come home. I stared at her. They've never wanted me, Vivian. They wanted a project, a punching bag, a scapegoat. Her voice cracked. I just thought maybe you could forgive them. Forgiveness. That word tossed around so casually by those who never had to survive the aftermath. I leaned back, arms crossed. When I was 16, I stood on a hot parking lot with no clue where to go. You know what saved me? A phone call to Marigold. Not to you, not to them, and certainly not forgiveness. Vivian's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. If this is about guilt, Vivian, I said quietly, you'll have to carry yours on your own. I laid mine down a long time ago. I reached into my wallet, pulled out a 20, and laid it on the table. For your breakfast. And the cab ride back to the hole they dug themselves into. Vivian blinked rapidly. Abigail, please. I stood. If they contact me again, I won't be so polite. Then I walked out. Back at my office, the world felt normal for a moment. Emails, schedules, construction updates. But when I opened my phone, I saw it. Facebook posts, shared hundreds of times. A blurry photo of me from years ago. The caption read, our daughter abandoned us in our old age after everything we sacrificed for her. Another one, we raised her to be strong. Now she's too heartless to even pick up the phone. Comments rolled beneath. Ungrateful brat. I hope karma finds her. Some people forget who raised them. I dropped the phone on my desk, jaw tight. So this was their move. Not a conversation. Not reconciliation. A public smear campaign. I stared out the window at the skyline. I had built my life from the ground up, no shortcuts, no safety nets. Now they wanted to destroy it with lies. I picked up the phone and called Marigold. She answered on the second ring. They found me, I said simply. A pause. Then, what do you need me to do? Nothing, I said, voice hardening. Not yet. Because I wasn't that 16-year-old anymore. And this time, I was ready for the storm. I barely made it through the revolving doors of Haven Developments that morning before Jenny, my assistant, met me in the lobby. Her face-pale lips pressed into a tight line. She didn't say good morning. She just handed me her phone and said, you need to see this. The screen was already open. Facebook. The post at the top of my feed was from Celeste Holloway, my mother. It read, we gave her everything. Love, shelter, food, our hearts. And now in our old age, our daughter refuses to even speak to us. She won't answer our calls, won't help us pay for medication. She built her company and forgot her own blood. What did we do to deserve this? The photo attached showed her sitting beside my father, Magnus. Both of them looking tired, frail, carefully posed in a dimly lit room that I immediately recognized was my childhood living room. I hadn't been in that space in 20 years, and yet I could still remember exactly how the air smelled of mothballs and lemon cleaner. In the photo, Celeste had her handkerchief out. Magnus looked into the camera with just the right amount of sadness in his eyes. It was staged. I knew it. Anyone who had grown up in that house would know it. But the internet didn't. By the time I sat down in my office, and scrolled through the comments. The post had already been shared over 400 times. Strangers were weighing in, condemning me, accusing me of being heartless, of letting my poor aging parents suffer while I sat on a throne of money. I couldn't breathe. I opened Instagram. Same thing. A clipped video edited of Magnus speaking directly to camera. We didn't raise her to abandon us. But I guess when money changes you, you forget who raised you. The caption read, "Heartbreak of parents she left us." Jenny stood nearby, waiting for my reaction. I realized my hand was shaking as I set the phone down. "How long has this been up?" "Since last night," she said softly. "It's spreading. A couple clients have called. A few team members saw it too. And the company page has been tagged." Of course it had. Of course they wouldn't stop at personal attacks. They wanted to burn down everything I'd built. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I felt the first flicker of that old pain rise in my chest, the kind I used to carry around like it was sewn into my ribs. But then something else surged behind it. Something cleaner. Sharper. I was tired of being afraid of them. Jenny was still standing there when I opened my eyes. "Can you clear my calendar for the morning?" She nodded. "And tell legal to expect a media inquiry. I'm going to respond." Her brows lifted. "Are you sure?" "No," I said truthfully. "But I'm doing it anyway." I drafted the post in silence. At first it was only a paragraph, then two. Then I opened a folder on my desktop, a folder I had created years ago, but never named, never touched. Inside it were screenshots, scanned letters, text messages. One of them was the message I'd gotten that day at the train station. Another was a photo of the vending machine I had stood beside for almost an hour waiting for them to come back. They never did. By the time I finished, it was 5 pages long. But I wasn't posting all of that. I posted only what mattered. A photo of me at 16, standing at the edge of the platform with a plastic bag in my hand, and the caption, "When I was 16, my parents left me at a train station to teach me a lesson. They didn't come back. Not for an hour. Not ever. I built my life from nothing, not because I didn't have parents, but because I did. I haven't responded publicly until now because I believed silence was strength. But silence can also be permission, and I'm done giving them that." I added the screenshot of Celeste's old message. "Let's see how long it takes her to find her way home. Consider this a lesson in problem solving." Then I hit post. I turned my phone off. The next morning, Jenny came into my office holding a thick envelope with a red seal on it. She didn't speak, just laid it on my desk. I didn't even have to open it to know what it was. I opened it anyway. Magnus and Celeste Holloway versus Abigail Holloway. Petition for filial support. It wasn't enough for them to lie about me online. They were suing me using an archaic interpretation of filial responsibility laws that hadn't been enforced in Texas in decades. I laughed. Quiet bitter from somewhere deep in my chest. Jenny watched me concerned. "What do you want to do?" I slid the papers into a drawer and looked up at her, my voice calm. "They've just played their last card." The courtroom was full before the proceedings even began. Reporters lined the back rows, their notepads, ready lenses polished. The buzz of whispered speculation filled the air. "That's her," someone muttered as Abigail Holloway walked through the double doors. The buzz fell into a hush. She wore a simple black blazer, no jewelry, no theatrics, just the quiet, poised presence of a woman who had nothing to prove but everything to defend. Across the room, Celeste Holloway sat in a soft gray cardigan, clutching a damp tissue, her eyes carefully red around the edges. Magnus sat beside her, jaw tight, wearing a pressed suit that didn't quite hide the wear in his frame. Their lawyer, a man known more for courtroom theatrics than substance, stood ready, flipping through a stack of pre-highlighted pages. To the press, it was the perfect story. The estranged daughter turned business mogul being dragged to court by her ailing parents, all under the weighty term filial responsibility. Abigail's attorney, David Trent, adjusted his cufflinks and leaned toward her. They want the media to eat this up. Don't play into it. Just be you. She nodded once. The judge entered and all rose. Magnus and Celeste's attorney began with emotion. Your Honor, my clients are not here out of greed. They are here as parents wounded and abandoned by the very child they once nurtured. Celeste dabbed her eyes right on cue. He continued painting Abigail as a daughter who had profited from their sacrifices, then heartlessly cut them off. We are not asking for millions, only for fairness, only for the basic support due to aging parents. David stood slowly. Your Honor, what the plaintiffs have omitted is the fact that Ms. Holloway has not been part of this household since the age of 16. She was left at a train station with no means of return, no contact, no support. What followed was not neglect on her part, but survival. He placed a set of folders on the bench. Included are bank records, tax filings, and sworn affidavits showing no financial connection between Abigail Holloway and the plaintiffs in the last 20 years. The judge flipped through them, expression unreadable. Then came the core of Abigail's case. David played a recording. The voice of Marigold Holloway, Abigail's aunt, came through clearly. You can't just leave her like that. Celeste pause. Then Celeste's unmistakable voice. It's for her own good. Let her figure out how the real world works. The courtroom went silent. Even the reporters stopped scribbling. Celeste's mouth parted in shock, but there was no denying it. No way to spin it. The abandonment wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a method, a decision. Magnus shifted in his seat, suddenly looking smaller. The illusion of being wronged parents cracked under the weight of their own words. David stood again. Miss Holloway built her life without them. Not a cent, not a letter, not a birthday call. Nothing. And now, because she succeeded, they return not with love, but with legal threats. This is not a family matter. This is extortion through narrative. The judge finally spoke. I've reviewed the evidence. The plaintiffs have not only failed to prove dependency, but have actively attempted to mislead this court. This case is dismissed with prejudice. Ms. Holloway's legal fees will be paid by the plaintiffs. A collective exhale swept the room. Cameras clicked. Celeste slumped in her chair. Magnus stared at the ground, blinking as though trying to wake from a dream. Outside the courthouse, Abigail stepped into the sunlight. Her lawyer followed, but she paused just before the top of the steps, turning slightly. Behind her, the two people who had once called themselves her parents emerged slowly, shielded by the glare of flash bulbs and public disgrace. They didn't look like villains now. They looked like exactly what they were. People whose cruelty had finally met consequences. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Justice had already spoken for her, and as she descended the stairs, head high, footsteps steady, she felt no victory, only closure. For years she had carried the shame they planted in her. Today, she had buried it not with revenge, but with truth. Because some verdicts don't need a judge. They only need light. The autumn air in Austin had a quiet weight to it that evening, the kind that wrapped around your skin like memory. Inside Abigail Holloway's modest apartment, the scent of rosemary and roasted squash filled the kitchen, and the soft murmur of local jazz spilled through the speakers. She stood by the stove, barefoot on cool tile-slicing apples, while Aunt Marigold stirred a pot of soup beside her. Everything was still. Everything was finally still. Then came the knock. 3 gentle taps measured almost apologetic. Not the kind that startled, but the kind that lingered in the air afterward, like a question waiting to be answered. Abigail met Marigold's glance before wiping her hands on a towel. She walked to the door, her instincts quiet but alert. When she opened it, Vivian stood there, shoulders hunched, skin-pale eyes rimmed with red. She hadn't seen her sister in person since the courtroom weeks ago. Vivian's polished exterior had been stripped away, and in its place was something raw frayed. "Hi," she croaked, voice breaking around the word. Abigail didn't respond immediately. Her gaze was steady, unreadable. Vivian wrung her hands. I didn't know where else to go. Come in, Abigail said at last, stepping aside. The words felt strange in her mouth, like borrowing someone else's language. Marigold stayed silent, ladling soup into bowls, as the two sisters sat across from one another at the small dining table. They lost everything? Vivian said softly, eyes cast down. After the judgment, no one would touch them. They're at a shelter now. Dad's been drinking more. Mom, she barely speaks. Abigail listened, every muscle in her body taut, but still. Vivian's breath shook. They're asking for help. Just a place to stay. Just for a while. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint simmering on the stove. I can't believe you came here, Abigail finally said. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. Deeply, endlessly tired, not after everything they did. They're still our parents, Vivian whispered. No, Abigail said. They stopped being that the moment they left me at that train station. Vivian's eyes filled again. They regret it. They were scared. They thought it would make you stronger. It did, Abigail cut in her voice steel. But that doesn't mean I owe them anything. For a moment, Vivian didn't speak. Then she pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket. If you can't help them yourself, maybe you know someone who can. Abigail stood, walked into the other room, and returned with a white envelope. She handed it to Vivian. What is this? Vivian asked, fingers trembling. A list, Abigail replied, of legal aid groups, housing assistance, nonprofits, and food banks. All real, all helpful. Just not me. Vivian looked up, hurt blooming in her eyes. You really won't even speak to them. I forgave them, Abigail said calmly. But forgiveness doesn't mean I invite destruction back into my life. It means I let it go and walk away. Vivian opened her mouth, then closed it. She rose from the table, sliding the envelope into her coat. I understand. I hope you do. Vivian walked slowly to the door. She paused once more. You look different, she said. Lighter. I am, Abigail replied. The door closed behind her. Abigail leaned against the wood, her breath catching not in pain, but in release. She walked over to the kitchen counter, picked up her phone, and opened her contact list. One by one, she blocked every remaining number tied to her past. Outside, the wind tugged softly at the balcony curtains. Marigold poured tea into 2 small ceramic cups and set one in front of Abigail. You okay, honey? She asked gently. Abigail took the cup and cradled it in her hands. She looked out the window at the city golden lights flickering across glass towers and quiet rooftops. For the first time in my life, she said, voice like dusk, I truly am. In the end, the last knock on the door is not just the close of a legal battle, it is the quiet triumph of a woman who was once abandoned, silenced, and shamed. Abigail's story isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming peace after decades of being manipulated by guilt, family pressure, and betrayal. To me, this story stands as a powerful reminder. Forgiveness and boundaries are not opposites. You can forgive without reopening the door. You can move forward without carrying those who once left you behind. Family is not defined by blood, but by choice, by those who choose to love, protect, and stand with you. One key lesson here is this. You do not owe your silence to anyone who once hurt you. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's necessary. And healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like closure without apology. If this story resonates with you, know that you're not alone. You have the right to walk away from people who hurt you, no matter what label they carry. I encourage you to share your own thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to let go of someone to protect your peace? And if you found value in this story, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing to the channel. There are more powerful, heartfelt stories to come. Thank you for watching.